I try to play to Booker. Oh, I got this from Kellogg. It's not as much as you've given me, but they're willing to, bring it up. And just so I never have to consider them, I just advise you take it from 80% to 100%. That was my game with Booker. And then I said to Kellogg, I've gotten this from Duke. 80%, you're giving me just like 50%. Do you want to match it so that I can definitely make that choice to leave Duke to come to you? I wasn't very successful.
Welcome to a special production of the Business 101 podcast. I am your host, Ayo. This is a limited series specifically sharing stories and experiences from some of the most selective and most prestigious business schools from the lens of recent international graduates. And if you don't want to miss out on conversations like this, please consider subscribing to this channel and turning on notifications. Today, I have the immense honor of welcoming a special guest from one of America's coldest business schools and one of my personal favorites, ranked consistently as one of the most prestigious in North America and the rest of the world, Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. Today's guest is Jibikeoluwa Faborode, one of those people your parents ask if they have two heads. She's a proud Nigerian, business strategist and international policy expert. She's also an incoming consultant at EY-Parthenon's Houston office. Jibike is a class of 2025 MBA grad from Kellogg, where she served as Vice President of Global Affairs for the Kellogg Student Association and worked to deepen student access to global experiences, geostrategy learning, and community building in a world with growing divides and intense competition. Before Kellogg, Jibike spent close to a decade in global strategy, foreign affairs, and climate finance in roles across Africa and the UK Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office. She was also at the African Development Bank and Huawei Technologies. She holds a master's in international development policy from Duke University, another master's in energy economics from University of Port Harcourt, and a bachelor's in electrical and electronics engineering from Obafemi Awolowo University, Nigeria. She's passionate about developing emerging economies, in particular across Africa and Asian markets. All of that being said, it is my pleasure to welcome Jibike to the Business 101 podcast. Good to have you here, Jibike.
Thank you so much, Ayer. It's my pleasure to also be joining today. And thank you for all the amazing things you've said about me. I think some of them are also like a bit exaggerated, but I'll take it.
I feel like there were so many cool things to say. I kept falling over my words. And like I said, you're one of those people that I hope that my mom or my dad doesn't watch this episode, right? Because I feel like it's going to be like, how does she have 3 masters? Because if you think about it, the MBA is a master's degree, right? So you have a master's in business, a master's in policy, and a master's in engineering. I think that's a good place to start. Let's add some life to some of those words that I just said, right? I know I read some really cool things about you, but I didn't do enough justice. So I want to give you some time to talk a bit about your background, business background, and why you thought having 3 master's degrees was a good idea.
Thank you so much, for the introduction. I think you were a bit too generous with your words, but I'll take it. So I started out in engineering because I was sort of groomed to think I was going to be an engineer. My dad is an engineer, so it was like a natural order. But when I got into university, I thought I wanted to explore other things because I didn't quite gel with the idea of engineering at the time. So that led me to working in the international development space, or I think foreign affairs, with the UK government over a couple of years, I think 2 years. And in that time, I started, just being restless, wanting to figure out where's the next phase of my career going to be in. So again, I signed up for my first master's, Sainsbury Accounting, in energy economics, thinking it was the best way to link my work in the development space into what led me into engineering in the first place, which is I wanted to solve Nigeria's power issues. So I kept doing that while I was working. So it's typically like an evening and weekend program. And the pandemic hit. That sort of disrupted that first degree, and it was just became a drag, to be honest. After the pandemic in 2021, I started seeing the shift in the financing of international aid programs, donors were beginning to pull funds or sort of shift funds. And I thought I wanted to be in a place where I got a chance to be in rooms where decisions were being made around where interventions should be set up or should be continued and stuff like that. So that was what led me to take up my master's degree at Duke in international development policy, because I thought that there were two levels to being able to make decisions about where financing goes,
Yeah.
either from the policy end or from business. So at the time, I was already trying to do my GRE to prepare for the MBA, but it was a lot of work responding to COVID, trying to figure out my own like career choices. And I just didn't have enough time to put the right application together for business school. But as God would have it, I got a fellowship to go to Duke. And I thought, I mean, why would I say no to a fully funded degree? So I took it anyways. And I thought when I'm there, I'll probably try to take some business classes and at least position myself as a public sector leader that is very vast in private sector doings or private sector development for being able to finance social good at scale. So got to Duke, and it sort of dawned on me while I was doing a graduate assistantship with the Institute for Energy and Environment, Nicholas School, that because I was working on impact investing at the time. And when you're so buried in the world of policy, there's just always a gap between when you're doing the policy and public sector speak and the private sector lens. So as much as we try to engage with private sector players as to like how to mobilize more capital into financing energy projects across Africa, I sort of saw that gap in the ways that we would from both sides would engage. And I thought, you know what, for me to really play in this field and really set myself up, I think I still need that business degree. So that led me to my third master's degree. And I think overall, it would just be that I grew up on a university campus, so I'm very comfortable with learning. It's never a case where I'm scared to go back to school. Okay, I lied. Yes, it was scary, but it sort of came naturally. I've been around education most of my life, so it wasn't that much of a big deal. And I wasn't practically counting like, oh, I definitely want to do 3 master's degrees. It just so happened. And I just followed like my journey. Yeah. So that's it.
Interesting. I remember like graduating from undergrad, and I don't know if this happened at your school, but my final week in school, I think we used to call it signing out day or something.
Finding out, yeah.
And you see a lot of people uploading different memes about after this bachelor's degree, I'm not going to read anything, not even the billboard, not even the newspaper, whatever. And then there's you who has spent more time in the classroom than out of it. I'm pretty sure probably spent more time in the classroom than you spent, out of it. What did your parents think, when you after getting 2 masters and doing all this sexy stuff? I mean, you'd worked in policy, you'd worked in development finance, you'd worked for a private player, a multinational, gotten 2 master's degrees onto, across 2 continents. Essentially, you had done everything that people would want to do, and then you probably called your parents and you're like, going back to school. What was that conversation like? Like, was there resistance from your parents, from your siblings? What did that look like?
So for my parents, I would say no. My parents have always trusted me. Like whatever it is that you're doing, we'll support you. Just tell us what you want to do. And we're always going to be behind you every step of the way. My siblings, on the other hand, I think there were 2 fractions. The ones that were like, okay, you know what? It's you now. Anything, whenever you wake up, we're ready to support you. And then there were the other ones that felt like, are you crazy? And to be honest, like that's a legit question. First degree was fully funded, stipends, or no, I didn't have to pay a dime. And this is you trying to step into debt. Like you don't need it. Why do you want to do that? And I remember when I was applying to business school, I just come out from my 30th birthday trip. It was a day to one of the deadlines for FUCA actually. And I was just about to start writing my essays. And so I locked myself up in the room for like 5 days, and my brother kept thinking, like, what is going on with you?
Midlife
I
crisis.
told him I was applying to business schools, and that was when it was like, okay, now something is wrong with you, and I need to get to the bottom of this, but you know what? I'm not even going to talk this thing with you right now. And I just told him, like, look, I'll get scholarships. And then it was like, do you think it's that easy to get scholarships? And I told him, like, well, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I know that I do definitely need some funding and it's going to come somehow. So I think going at it with that mindset of, well, there might be issues, but when I get to that bridge, I'll cross it. All I know is like right now, if there's a need for me to do something to up my skills, to help my chances at getting into in the right rooms that can set my career up, or even make more impact, being able to work with C-suite leaders across the world. Yeah, I'll take it. And so my parents theirs was like, you know what? Okay, go get it. I think the biggest worry that my parents had was I'm the last kid. And so at this time, they're like, I don't think we can fund the master's degree. So and I told them I was going to take a loan. They're like, oh my God, the way typical African parents, loan, no, we don't do that. And I was like, don't worry, people are taking it. They did not die. I'll be fine if that's what it comes to.
Yeah.
And so it was never a point where they were questioning like my need to go to school again. If anything, my dad is still right now thinking, you know what, a PhD won't be bad.
Might as well just get a PhD.
So to be honest, I'm not, it's never been a problem telling my parents if I decided today I wanted to go to another degree, they would, back me up. And I think the reason why they do that is because they've seen me over the years. When I'm working, I'm applying it at the same time. So all my time in these programs, I'm constantly working. I'm either doing some consultancy somewhere in Africa or working with some, institution somewhere as part of a fellowship. So there's always a way that there's no gap on my resume, so to speak. So it's not just like I'm in the classroom. I'm actually in the classroom and having the chance to put the things to practice as I'm learning as well. So it's been an amazing sort of 4 years or 5 since all of these things have been happening in my life. But I must say that I'm looking forward to just focusing on work.
Thinking about it. You think you're going to do a PhD at some point?
I think so. It wouldn't be immediate, but there's a fair chance that I would get a PhD at some point.
At some point.
But
Amazing.
fingers crossed.
Amazing. Okay. So once you had decided you're going to get an MBA and, had the conversations, was there any point where you personally had like cold feet, maybe because of the application process, or you realized, I'm going to be taking this amount of loan, I'm going to be losing this X amount in income, things like that. Did you have any cold feet, or was it go from day one?
No, it wasn't from day one. And that was why my applications were super late in the day. I knew that I wanted to do an MBA, but what I said to myself was maybe I'd just go into the workforce for 1 year and then I'll come back and do it. And then I remember having dinner with one of my friends who was at Duke at the time, Dayo Adesanya, and he asked me what next. And I told him I was going to go study and, well, maybe I'll do an MBA. It's like, why not now? Like, this is the perfect time. You just finished. Your brain is still fresh. You have access to a lot of networks. In fact, just get into Fuqua. It's, easy.
I know it's always like that.
And I was like, I don't know about that. That geez, like, how would I do this? And it's like, you know what? Yeah, the resources, I can link you up with people. And I'm like, oh my God. I think one thing I hate more than deciding is having somebody else tell me what I already know that is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so there was no backing out because now somebody is also like or sort of putting a mirror in front of me. And I'm like, okay, I see it. I know it. So let me just do it.
Yeah.
So it was also like tough getting to that point where I have to write essays. Mind you, I was in my final year of my master's at Duke, which meant that not only did I have to do a master's project, I had to do a full semester of coursework with exams. And with my fellowship at Duke, then there's this like final project you have to do where you have like a conference you have to prepare for, and it's a lot of preparation. So it was like an intense last semester for me. And I just thought, I don't know if I have it in me to dedicate what it takes to get into like business school right now. But just having somebody else tell you like, just go for it, just made me also feel like, you know what? If I perish, I perish. Let me just give you what it takes. Yeah, so that was it. I would say I got a bit of cold feet for sure. But the moment I started writing, and when I got back into the country in January, it just became, at least now I've done the application. So they tell me no, let it be that somebody else told me no, not me telling myself no. Yeah.
That makes sense. And when you're already living in the US at the time, so probably made sense I decided to do a US MBA, but did you consider, European MBA? Most people, once they decide to get an MBA, then have to decide if it's going to be, North American or if it's going to be British or let me say European, right? Did you have that kind of decision-making process, or was it going to be the US from the onset?
For a very split second, I like to put it that way, I considered doing an European master's just because it's like a 1 year or 10 months. And given that I've done 2 years, it makes sense. But I've always known that I prefer the US MBA system just because of the 2 year. Me being at Duke had allowed me to see what my peers had experienced in the typical MBA program, not anything I've reached, not 1 year. I wanted that experience because I felt like it gives you so much time to have that transformative experience, to learn, to explore. And so I really wanted to just get access to the full experience because even in the US, I also could have gone for like a 1 year version of the program. But I knew that if I'm going to do it at all, let me just do it well. 2 years, before I know it's going to be done. So I feel like for a very short moment, I thought I considered the European version. But overall, I knew that it wasn't just enough time for me to fully explore, question myself in the program, just give myself enough time to really have that transformative experience that I was seeking with a business degree.
That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. And it's so interesting that I feel like the idea of choice is such an interesting thing because the same reasons why, one option is a bad idea for one person might be the exact same reason why it's a great idea for another person. That's it.
Exactly.
But some people were like, oh, I wanted a 1 year MBA because it was, it's super short, focus on business courses, and then I go do what else I want to do. And then, I agree with you. For me, it was also like, it's too short a period. I mean, when I was applying, the only European school I applied to was LBS, and it was because you could choose a longer period. And
Yeah.
I decided I was going to do the 21 month. I know they had the 12. No, they had the 15, 18, and 21 month options, and I decided I was going to do the 21 month. For the same reasons, having some time to introspect, do an internship, all of that.
Exactly.
Thanks for speaking about that. Now I know that we already started edging around the conversation around, the application process, but let's talk a bit more about it. For someone who was living in the US at the time, and going through the application process, right? What did GRE exam writing, I guess, if you can call it that, taking the standardized tests, writing your essays, looking for application waivers. I don't know if you give that. What else is the visa, but that probably doesn't apply to you. But yeah, let's just talk a bit about your application process. And I don't have any particular question. Just chat to me.
Yeah. No, I would share my application process because I don't think it was a traditional process.
Okay.
Most people who decide to go to business school have been sure for a couple of months. They've been doing a lot of like speaking to people, networking. I didn't do a lot of that. While on the trip, I remember that I would ask my girls when they go to sleep at night after we've come back from a full day of fun, like, you know what, I need to write businesses. And I was just talking like one paragraph, all of that trip. So I didn't write anything. I got back on the 3rd of January, and that was a deadline I think that was deadline for Harvard. So there was no way I could meet that. The next deadline for so I started writing that day, locked myself up somewhere in the house, wrote all my essays, reached out to my mentor. I was like, look, this is what I need. You have all of my information because you um did my last reference
Good.
letters previous masters. So you know what? I'll explain to you later. And just having people like that wouldn't sort of jump up for you as well was really critical. Having people in my network that I rely on and explain, like, I'm so sorry, I'm bringing this on you last minute, but this is what I need. So that happened. And so I was able to still find four programs to apply to. I applied to Duke, applied to Kellogg, and Columbia. So many of the schools, the deadlines are passed for round 2. So it was just difficult. Anyways, I did that and I was like, you know what? I've done my bit. I did it over 5 days just so I could meet all those deadlines. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get whatever God says, I'll take it. Like this one, I did it. Like it's gonna be my fault if I didn't get it, but whatever. So, and all of these essays, I didn't have the time to even reach out to people in these schools to find out about the programs. I just went off with the vibe that, okay, I've been in a university environment. I understand what to expect. I've seen the Fuqua Business Schools program so closely because I had a lot of friends there. I was always, in that particular building a lot. And so by virtue of reading through websites for the other schools, I could sort of get a better understanding of what the equivalent would be in those schools. So I just wrote my essays based on that. So that's why I don't advise anyone to take that route, because it was
I
a
see what.
dangerous route to take. Be more prepared.
It's,
It makes a lot of sense. You would not lose yourself in the process. And thankfully I didn't. And
mm,
a couple of months after, I started getting invites to interviews for 3 out of the 4 schools. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is a miracle, you know? But it also just
right.
reassured me that, you know what, you must be on the right path. If all of these schools want to speak to you, even though you're still finishing a current master's, and even though your application was rushed, it just gave me that sort of next level push that I needed. And so I started taking it a lot more seriously. Even though I was super stressed with running up a current program, it was one of the most serious moments of my life, because I was juggling a lot at the same time. People around me
Can
did not
imagine.
understand, because I also couldn't share it with people, like, this is what I'm doing. It's like, why are you so tired all the time? Like, I am working overtime here. But I did the interviews. I got a lot of support from my networks within Fuqua. I also had people that I knew that got into other schools. So beyond when I started getting the invites to the interviews, I then started doing a lot of the outreaches to different schools to understand what to expect. Did the interviews,
Yes.
and I got into all the 3 programs that I interviewed with scholarships. So I was like, I told my brother, I was like, I told you so.
Power, power, power. Don't try this at home, like you said. Oh, hey, you collect what you said.
Of course, I wasn't bragging, because I knew I was still going to need their support in some way, or or form in future. So, but it was also good for them, because then everybody was now more pumped up for me. Sort of told them, like, you know what, if you could do this, this is amazing. Like, you're definitely on the right path. And as I got into all that process, I was trying to round up um my current program as well. I got into those 3 schools with the scholarships, and then it became a problem of, okay, how do you decide? It's a no-brainer. I thought I was 90% sure that I was going to Fuqua, because they gave me more funding. I was already there. I wouldn't need to uproot my life. But over time, I just realized that maybe take the long-term approach to this as well. If I already had a Duke degree, it makes sense for me to just branch out a bit, meet more people and just expand my view. And so that's what led me to Kellogg eventually. And I'm so not sad that I made that choice. It would have been great to be classmates with you, of course. But look at us
Okay.
now.
It's, yeah, your rationale makes sense to me. That
And I remember, I was already on the Fuqua, what's the WhatsApp group, and I had to break it to you guys after a while that I'm sorry, guys, I won't be coming to Fuqua anymore, because I genuinely felt like I had established a form of community with the Fuqua folks for who were new admits. And I think that was what struck me about the Duke brand. Like, I could relate to it so strongly, but I also was torn between, okay, this other brand makes sense. Maybe it's just good. It's just okay for me to, sail into it and see what it holds. And I'm glad that that decision paid off. It was great. I didn't get as much funding eventually as I did at Fuqua, but it was a trade-off I was willing to make, and I did, again, with a lot of support and advice from people around me, mentors, just people who had been in the process before. And so, yeah, that was my journey through the application process. Is there anything else I'm missing?
I know you didn't have to worry about like the visa process, and you probably
Yes.
didn't have to think about getting waivers, application fee waivers, because
Oh, I did.
you did.
See, I was a student. I did have money.
But if you could only apply to 4 schools, I guess you're going to apply whether they give you waivers or not.
Yes. Yes. I only got a waiver for Colombia. The other schools, because Colombia was the farthest deadline I had, so I was able to do that. But the other school is like, I was just like, you know what, Kellogg, I'm sorry, Fuqua, I couldn't even do it because it was like the next day. So I just submitted an application regardless. And so that was the only program I applied to for a waiver, and I got it. So I think the lesson is, if you think you have a reason, just push for it. You just never know. I didn't think they were going to give it to me, but they did. And I think there's a lot more schools that offer different reasons for getting waivers, and people just need to do their due diligence before applying, so they know what they can get and what they can't.
I mean,
Yeah, I think that's mostly it.
okay, that makes sense. And I was telling this all recently that he's applying this year, I think it's class of 2028, and he was asking me about, oh, so what I think I should be thinking about when trying to decide on the school to go. And I was like,
Yeah.
I can answer this question, but you're asking at the wrong time, right? Like, when you at the stage of application, it doesn't matter what you just apply to as many schools as you can apply to that
Mm-hmm.
fit in what you're trying to get out of an MBA. So if you have identified this is what you want in an MBA, apply to as many schools as, will give you that thing that you can afford to apply to. The part of deciding where should I go to is the second stage when you've been accepted, right? If you're not accepted to
Exactly.
Kellogg, you don't have to worry. Like, there's no point in worrying whether you want to go.
Worry when you have it in your hand.
Exactly. But yeah, this was very interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Like I can share a bit on that. I think that what helped me or how I decided on the four schools I applied to was definitely I wanted top schools. My primary goal was Fuqua because that's like at all. If I don't get it to anyone, I must get to this. And so the first criteria was what schools have essays that are similar to Fuqua's essay. So that helped me to also like just go with it from a strategic standpoint. How do I find schools that the application process would be easier on me because I had a time crunch? That's how I found Kellogg, to be honest. And then finding Kellogg, I looked up the school. I was like, this is actually like a solid one. I think they had very similar, two of the essays were actually very similar.
Yeah.
So I did that. Cornell was like I was looking for, as I'd missed out on Harvard and the MITs and co. I was like, what other top name, top 10 schools are there. So I looked at Cornell. I was like, perfect, Ivy League. So why not? Columbia, same thing. So that's how I made that decision. So there was a bit of, even though I was so last minute, I still took a strategic lens to figuring out what schools I could apply to and where would I stand a better chance. The whole goal was to ensure that I could have offers to use to negotiate if push comes to shove for Duke.
Yeah.
But eventually I didn't even have to go there. So that point of wait till you get the offers you have and then you can decide, because anything before that is like, you just never know. I didn't know that I was never going to, go
Yeah.
to Fuqua.
Yeah. I was not going to ask this question, but it was good that you mentioned the part about using offers to negotiate. And I've never asked this question from anyone on this, but I'm glad that you brought it up. Can you talk a bit more about that? Because it's a strategy that I realized not everyone knows. I mean, after after I went to business school, I realized not everyone knows about that strategy. Talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, just because when you're engaging a school and you're trying to either get access, maybe you want to get off the wait list or you want to get more funding, they want to know what other school found you worthy.
Yeah.
And what do those schools stand for, like when placed against ours in terms of how to compare both schools and what options you have. And so it's usually definitely critical for you to have something as a bargaining chip. For me, in my case, I used it. I tried to play, to Booker. Oh, I got this from Kellogg. It's not as much as you've given me, but they're willing to, bring it up. And just so I never have to consider them, I just advise you take it from 80% to 100%. That was my, that was my game with Fufa. And then for Kellogg, I was same timing, I was wording all of these letters. I said to Kellogg, I've gotten this from Duke, 80%, you're giving me just like 50%, do you want to match it so that I can definitely make that choice to leave Duke to come to you? I wasn't very successful, but also I think it was not because I did, or maybe I didn't have it was not because I didn't have the negotiating skill as much as I have now. Because now that I'm having gone through business school, I know what kind of what kind of arguments to play with. And I think that's the most critical thing, being able to have the option of what to use to actually negotiate, and being able to actually sit with your peers and your mentors to be able to figure out what are the things I can use to pitch to these schools to consider me.
Yeah.
And so I would say those are the things. And I think it's positive for most people who have actually done it. So it's a 50-50 thing. It could work. It might not work. But the mere option of you even having that gives you a bit more leverage overall. And I know people who've actually like unlocked more about maybe like additional $40,000 in funding, and then it goes a long way. So even though I wasn't successful, I did it, and I've been able to advise people who have actually been successful after then. So I would say definitely make sure you're applying to schools that stand a chance against each other. So if I'm applying to a top, say an M7 school, I want to potentially have another M7 offer to use because the reason why also it didn't work out for Kellogg versus Duke was because Kellogg, for example, was looking at, they had a lot of people who had both Duke and Kellogg offers. Again, similar to the S's are different. They're almost very similar, right? But it became that if you're going to want to, how many people are they going to
Make that up.
funding
Yeah.
for because of that? So there had to be like a secondary reason, like, oh, if the school is also like another
7.
school that have the same kind of leverage they claim they have, then they'll probably take it a lot more seriously and say, you know what, okay, yes, we don't want to lose. So I think that I've been strategic to know, like, if you're applying to 10 schools, group them. What schools can I use to, against the other? What schools will ensure that, okay, this allows me to have something to say to this other school? And I think that would also make it like an easier sale. Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a good thing to say. And I feel like it's very important to point out because I spoke to a couple of people, while I was in the business program who had only applied to one school because they felt very convinced and very convicted about that school. And it's very good, right? Like in theory, I feel like it's a very convincing argument to tell the school that I only apply to you because I definitely want to come here. The
Yeah.
downside is you don't have a lot of bargaining chip, right?
Yeah.
And you have to understand that these schools are also running a business. Sometimes we forget the part that this is a business to these people, right? And the way you want to get into the highest ranked school, for most people, that's like a very important metric that you can get into. They also want to attract the smartest people that they can attract, right? And they rank those, using, the kinds of schools that you can get into, just like Jibike said, right? So if you're applying to an M7, for example, and you want to convince them to increase your funding, what else? Do some of the stuff for you, right? If you can come to them and say, this is another M7, equally as prestigious, who has given me this thing I'm asking from you, but I really want to come to you because I prefer your brand or whatever, they are more likely to take you seriously than if you were applying or bargaining with a lower ranked school or not, or you don't have another school to bargain with at all.
Yes.
I for sure was able to get additional funding from Duke because I had also gotten into schools like Yale, Berkeley, London Business School. Those were equally prestigious schools that I could say, I really want to come to Duke because of this reason. This thing I'm asking from you is a very important deciding factor. And if you don't give me, I will not come.
Yeah.
So you want to do that. But I digress. Back to the plot. If we can, let's talk a bit more about your experience at Kellogg. Assume that I don't know this. Tell me where your school is, what kind of activities the city is known for, and which of those activities did you participate in, as a student living in that city?
So the Kellogg School of Management the main campus is in Evanston, Illinois. I thought I was going to Chicago.
You did?
So for admit, this is a funny story. For admit weekend, similar to how you'd have Blue Devil weekend for Duke.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go and see because I didn't even know where, I didn't know where the school was. And I was like, what do you mean Evanston? I thought I was going to Chicago. And so that was the first time I realized where the school was. Again, it's my fault because I didn't do a deep research before the program and stuff. But they also have a campus in Chicago, which is where a lot of the evening and weekend students, so the part-time students, take their classes. And that's where you have some of the other schools like the law school and the medical school. So they're all in like a part of Chicago that's close to the water, just by the lake. Like the business school is right on a lake. And that was another main reason why I chose Kellogg, because when I went for admit weekend, we have this white auditorium at Kellogg where they host a lot of the major flagship events, and they pull the curtains up. So you're literally looking and gazing into the lake from the room. I was like, wait, like I must have that. Like, what? This is amazing. How have I missed? I didn't even know there was a lake. Again, I didn't do my own research.
Is this Lake Michigan?
Yeah, Lake Michigan. It was just so beautiful. I went, thankfully I didn't go in the fall, so it wasn't like crazy winter weather, because that had been a setback to me, going to Kellogg. But it was the spring, so it wasn't too cold. You could see the lake. It was pretty, and that was one of the reasons why I went. But yeah, it's in a small town. So Evanston is more like, we call it Heavenston, because it's like a little Our little Evan. No, it's really nice. And for me,
These people.
for me, I grew up in a university campus, so it felt like I was back to these. Everywhere was like a small community. You could walk, everything is within walking distance. You could take a walk to school. I lived in downtown Evanston, so it was perfect. The food scene, I would say. And then you also have like the metro systems that get into the city in Chicago within 20 minutes, and you have to pay like $2. So it was cheap on that front. Going to Chicago has one of the best food scenes. So I'd say that's one of the things that I'm a foodie. Besides travel, I love food. So being able to explore restaurants with friends and partying, as you know, the next thing you do in business school after learning is to party. Partying in Chicago a lot with friends was definitely something that I did explore as well. And then being in Chicago, which is also like a major business hub, that was very useful for me during networking for sort of recruiting when you're trying to get jobs, because a lot of the firms have headquarters or major offices in Chicago. So you get access to meet more people for coffee chats and stuff. So that was really a plus for me as well. And for some of the internships I did during the program, I did an internship with a VC firm, and I would go to Chicago every week. So it was just like an every other day thing. It was nice. It didn't feel very disruptive to the rest of my school program. That was great. The architecture, that's one thing that you definitely want to explore when you go to Chicago. Being able to take some of the architecture tours, getting on the lake. I think that so I did the pre-MBA recruiting. And so before I got into the program, I'd gone to Chicago with a bunch of friends. And I remember having the first company type engagement that I did was on this big yacht. It was BCG.
Okay.
And I was like,
You
this
didn't
is
go
the
out,
life.
go
Oh.
out.
I'm so glad that I'm here, because where I'm coming from, no shade,
Yeah.
no water, right? So this is just nice. And before then, I was always very scared of the weather. But then it made me forget that for a bit until in a couple of months' time, I was like, this cold is a lot. Oh. But it was good overall. So I'll tell you those are the main things that I got to enjoy between Evanston and Chicago, and also being able to take some classes in the Chicago campus, being able to meet other students who are currently working, expanding your network, basically. That was really, really critical for me.
Yeah.
And those are the big things really out here I enjoyed being in Chicago. Things I can explain right now, but there are definitely other things that I think we'll get into before we end the call.
Amazing. Talking about the youth experience, BCG knows how to go out when they're trying to woo you. Prem is very
It was the full course meal. I was like, no, I've arrived. It really, yeah, it was
they
good.
do a great job. They do a good job with trying to attract people to the firm. But I feel like something you said earlier is a good way to segue into my next question, right? Which is what you said about aside the study part of the MBA, the other part is the party time, is the party side of it, right? One of the things people say about the MBA is that it's a 2-year vacation. You like your experience a 2-year vacation?
Yes and no. Yes, because every day is a party. So yes. And I got to travel a lot. A lot of my travel, in fact, most of them were funded by the school. So it was great. But I was doing all of these things and having the full MBA experience to the best of my abilities, because 30 plus gang, you can't really out party this, people in their 20s. So I wasn't, trying to compare and compete. But I was also working. I had a fellowship I was doing with a firm in Nigeria. And so it was like impact investing. And I did that for most of my business school experience. So it felt like I was in a part-time MBA, but in a full-time program. And I'd also layered on top of that additional sort of internships, either summer internships or in-semester internships with like the one in the VC firm. So it was intense being able to juggle everything and still being able to connect with friends that are not in the MBA program or family. So it was a lot. I remember my first quarter I was a bit removed from it all because I had just finished one program. And the summer after, I spent all of those 3 months trying to get into consulting. So I was recruiting nonstop. And then I started the program. So there was no break. And so when people came into the program and it was excitement, oh, let's do this, I'm like, excuse me, I'm tired. And eventually people were like, what is wrong with you? Just let this program. What do you mean you're tired? So I couldn't get myself to get that energy up immediately. And it took me like most of my first year actually to get to the same energy levels as my peers. I just didn't understand why people were so excited. Like, okay, yes, you're like, why are you so excited? Like every day cannot be a party. Like I just want to rest. And
Yeah.
I'm also like a more reserved person, even though I have my crowds where, you'll see the opposite. But it just felt like I've suddenly been thrown into this place and I'm like, how do I even make them like it was just a lot for me. So personally, I felt like it was a lot socially, wanting to feel like you're not missing out, that FOMO fear of, just missing things.
Yeah.
I struggled with it initially and I just had to tell myself, like, look, you know why you're here. You know what you can do. Like it's all about your capacity. What capacity do I have now? If I don't have it, I don't have it. I don't need to feel like I have to force myself to do things because every other person is doing it.
Yeah.
I know my journey is different from that of others, and so I'm just going to do what makes me feel okay without pressuring myself into things. And I think that's when I began to ease into things at my own pace. But it can be a lot for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just about the time where, you said you had gotten your energy levels up, you then went to do an exchange, right? Well, talk about your exchange experience and all the other experiential learning, travel related experiential learning experiences that you had at Kellogg.
Yeah, the good thing about Kellogg, which I'll give it, is a lot of people complain that Kellogg doesn't give as much funding coming in, especially for Africans. I've, you know, complained. I think it got better or it's getting better, at least in my own set. But I think the advantage that people fail to capture when they're coming in is what other opportunities are there when you get into the program. I think those are even very more like a lot important that people don't understand. Like all the travel experiences. There was a class I did called Global Immersion, Global Initiatives in Management, where we had to go to South Korea. I chose South Korea and Japan. And the trip was about almost 7,000, at least the minimum cost, because it's always more than whatever the claim it is. And it was fully funded by Kellogg. That was the start of I've entered my Asia traveling journey, and this is what I wanted to do coming to business school, because before now, I've been exploring Europe and I feel like this is one region that I've never been fully exposed to.
Yeah.
So I did that. Shortly after, I went to the exchange program in Singapore at INSEAD, and it was amazing. Again, because I was exploring a social entrepreneurship pathway. I was launching my own social enterprise. I had a lot of entrepreneurship funding, either from a program they call Levy Inspiration Grant, where you get up to $5,000 to go explore in any. So I went to Nigeria. I went to another Asian country as well. And then the social entrepreneurship funding as well gave me that funding to be able to travel. In fact, I just couldn't do all the trips that I was approved for because of visa issues. But being able to have them approve travel to almost 7 countries at one go was just like, oh my God, and having all of that funding available to you to be able to really deepen your learning, to be able to deeply research the issues that you're most passionate about. I was working on elder care solutions. So for tech interventions and services, and like Asian markets, be it Japan or any of these Southeast Asian countries have they're quite advanced in that space. So it was really interesting to be able to explore, go with faculty as well. And the final one was the China trip, just being able to go on a trek to China, which again was funded in some way. It just made I ended up doing a lot of travel around Asia, just as I wanted to do for my MBA education. And that was fascinating. And having to do that with the funding support, with faculty support, walking through your journey, pointing you to other areas or people you can talk to, alumni connections in those markets. That was like the best part of the MBA program for me. And I see myself actually potentially going to Asia at some point. So fingers crossed.
Interesting. Maybe that's where you're gonna get the PhD.
Yeah, actually, it's possible. It is
Right?
possible.
Yeah, because you have a Nigerian bachelor's, a Nigerian
Yeah.
master's,
Yes.
an European master's, an American
No, I didn't have a
master's.
European masters.
Don't
Well,
you have a master's from? Oh, you worked in the UK. Not stuck.
yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, now you have an American master's, so
I would
for
actually, because I mean, look at China's influence in Africa is growing. So I wouldn't mind actually just go embed myself there somewhere, learn the language, and maybe become a Asia Africa expert.
Okay. Was that That was your best country to, or your favorite country, let me say, to explore to?
It's hard to choose though. I really, really enjoyed my time in Japan. Tokyo was amazing. So I'll say between Tokyo and China. Singapore, oh my God, like it's hard to choose. Like I would live in Singapore. I would visit Tokyo again or Kyoto, and I would definitely study in China.
In China.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So in terms of, I mean, you already been living in the US before, so you're already probably used to this, but you know, the whole networking process, building connections, that's something that I've realized that internationals sometimes struggle with, because you're coming from a background where when you're trying to find a job, you probably don't need to talk to anyone at the firm. Just find an opportunity online, apply. If you qualify, they invite you to interview. In fact, people who try to network into the company, you kind of bedevil them, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
You're pulling strings and things like that. Versus in the US where nobody would even
We have life.
schedule you for an interview. It happens almost like 20 people. What did you feel like, transitioning, from that culture to the new one? And this might have been something that happened during your master's program at Duke, or if it happened during the MBA as well, we'd like to hear about that.
It definitely happened during my time at Duke, but also that was it wasn't as heavy as you have on the business side because I was in a policy degree. And while people will always be interested to talk to you, I had a lot more programs that allowed me to go engage with them either in their workplace or they come on campus. So
Yeah.
it was soft landing, I would agree, but it still didn't prepare me for the world of networking that business school is. But I knew about it because I'd seen all of my friends doing coffee chats.
Yeah.
They never come, they'll tell you like, oh, what event? Oh, really? Where is that? I'm like, you're in this same school. Don't do like stop acting like the business school is the only thing on this earth, I sort of knew that I didn't see myself in that future where that would be me, where all I know is like in this, when I was at Northwestern, I could count. I don't think I went to any other faculty or any school wanting to really explore my life or just a Kellogg, explore whatever it is. And so it definitely is a different ball game. Thankfully, I had another primer before I got into the program through the pre-MBA recruiting cycle. And that allowed me to also strengthen that before getting into that first year of the MBA program where it's the race, the competition is so crazy.
Yeah.
And I know you would maybe share some bits about your own journey in that. But the first year, that first quarter of business school is intense because you come in and people expect you to already know, oh, so what are you recruiting for? I'm like, what do you mean? I came here to explore and to, how am I supposed to know?
Mhm.
But you actually, you're supposed to know because you have
Yeah.
to decide, you have to like choose something before the going gets rough. And so it became also getting to, before you actually open up opportunities, seeing that they've all been taken off. I'm like, people are not joking, people are not smiling. And so it's the same rigor that people would also take to when you get invited or when you have company events.
Yeah.
Everybody's at the table. But the good thing about the Kellogg culture was there was that sense of shared responsibility to ensure that the conversations moved around. You give people the chance to speak. So I was grateful for that. But also, my reserved nature allowed me to just step back. Also, because I was recruiting from a place of some kind of, maybe a bit of privilege because I had an offer already from the pre-MBA recruiting cycle.
Yeah.
And so I'll just lean back and just listen and to watch people. And it made me realize like you have to also be more aware, self-aware, because these people are engaging without obviously anyone recording or a mirror to let them know that this is how I perform.
Yeah.
But watching as a third party, and I'm like, oh my God, this man is tired of you talking. Like, you need to keep quiet now, But people, because it's so new, they're trying everything to get the attention of the other person. They're trying different. Sometimes they sound so inauthentic. It's just part of the learning process. If you don't do it, like there's no way to get better. So I was never at the point where I was looking down on people. If at all, I'm learning from them, like, okay, what not to do or what better.
Yeah.
So it was definitely like, and even now, I don't think you ever fully get to a place where, yes, 100%, great at this networking thing, so I'm good. It's still a journey, but definitely gets better along the way.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. And you're very correct in this sense. It was also something I found a bit weird that, you start business school, 3 weeks later, companies and employers are coming to campus, and you're supposed to already know what you want to recruit for
Yeah.
and be going to talk to them. And a lot of people are, just figuring it out. And so people make a lot of mistakes early on. Unfortunately, not every industry is as forgiving. Banking, for example, those early interactions can
Please don't remind me
actually.
about my banking.
Did you recruit banking?
What did I not do? So that was one of the reasons, and I think that's one of the advantages of me starting early. That pre-MBA, I first started with investment banking. I remember going to, New York. Evercore invited us. I was like, okay, this is. But the moment I was like, I'm not sure I have the strength for this, and I quickly pivoted to consulting. But it was good to be able to experience that and decide for myself that, you know what, I'm not sure that this is for me,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, those
Yeah. I feel
those
like
are
Evercore is the BCG of banking. That's the only firm, that's the only banking firm, I would say, investment bank that I actually considered working for. I actually recruited Evercore pre-MBA, but kind of like you, I mean, went through the first stage, but caught, was it at super, anyway, the point is, um, yeah, those initial interactions where you're still trying to figure out, like, what am I doing here? Like, maybe you just read the hour before, just read about, what are the new deals happening in time? No, you're now trying to sound like you've been following banking for the last 10 years.
you
And both
get.
people can tell, right?
In fact, that was where I felt like, because the networking, they're asking you, the original little coffee chat.
Yeah.
I don't
I
even know
don't know
what
what
this
to
is
say to
like. I
you,
don't know what
right?
to.
I don't have
So yeah, that
questions.
was like, you know what? Let me just help myself. This one is a bit. Maybe I'm, you're getting into the deep too fast.
Yeah.
But still, it doesn't mean that people don't get into investment banking or
Yeah.
figure out their way around the networking
Yeah.
process. But for me, it was particularly harder because I was coming from a non-traditional background, not a lot of business. It was social impact. These people don't care. Well, some of them do, but to be
Yeah.
honest, let's be factual. Like,
Yeah.
that's not why we're here. It's not
That's
social
what
impact. It's
it.
not the social. It's not policy. Like,
Yeah.
so it was tough for me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, not to scare anyone. Obviously, some people do it successfully.
Yeah.
Every top school sends people to investment banking. And the good part of it, I feel like, is the fact that people scale up really fast. Like, you see
Yeah.
people who were saying nonsense in the first week, and you hear the conversations they are having in the fifth, sixth week. Very
The growth is
different.
always beautiful to
Yeah,
watch.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable process, but you go a ton. So that's a plus, I'd say. But when you were going to Kellogg, I know when I was applying to Kellogg it had a reputation for being a marketing school. Do you remember? Did you get that vibe when you were applying?
No, I didn't
It
even know
might
what
be.
it was. Again, I applied because it had essays that were similar to Duke's.
I feel like even till now, like if you go on Reddit
Yes.
or NBA
Yeah.
Live Wire
So
or
it was
something.
later when I was preparing for the interviews that I now, you know what, okay, let me even understand what this school is. And I started to see.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it doesn't even give me that vibe at all. I only took the compulsory, the core classes, the core class for marketing, which was nice, but I knew it wasn't like my cup of tea per se
yeah,
to do marketing. But it's a great marketing school.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's so many other things that Kellogg is great at. In
Right?
fact, I put it in one of my interviews recently where I said, people feel like consulting or banking or some of this finance, like I feel like Kellogg could as well be a finance or a consulting school. Like they're equally as great in this field. So it's a myth that has refused to shake off. Yeah.
Yeah, which is something that I actually find weird about, schools having a reputation for something. They say, oh, Booth and Columbia, I guess, and New York Stern are like finance schools because they're in New York, I guess, and Chicago,
Wharton?
Columbia. Wharton also, I think, also has a strong finance
Yeah,
reputation.
it's finance. Yeah.
Kellogg is a marketing school. But the point is, when you look at the employment reports, it's
It's not
almost the
giving
same
that.
percentages. Like almost every top school will send between 15 and 25% of its class to consulting, another 20 or so percent to banking, 10 or
You're
so
right.
percent. Like it's almost the same percentages that go into different industries. So I wonder where the reputation comes from. Anyway,
Yeah, it's just because they're great at it. Last time they started out being known for that and
yeah,
they diversified over the years, but it's hard to shake that brand that is, with you for
yeah,
a couple of years. So
yeah, Yeah. But yes, if anyone is watching, if you stumble upon something that says Kellogg is a marketing school, don't feel like you should only go to Kellogg if you want to be in the marketing field. Please, you can be a consultant, as you can tell, and you
Yes.
can go into banking. I'm going to Kellogg.
Yeah, even social impact. Like they're actually like really
Yeah.
big on social impact as
Yeah.
well. So if there's like social impact and sustainability type related stuff, it's huge at Kellogg. I took a lot of classes. My social entrepreneurship journey that had lots of funding again was related to that. So I think it's something that people don't get to see a lot until you know somebody on the inside that gives you a lot of this, inside scoop
Yeah.
on what to expect here.
Yeah. 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 Jibike, you were also VP of Global Affairs, right? For Kellogg. What did that role entail? What kind of stuff did you do in that role? So how were you able to combine it with like everything else that was happening, in the business school at that time? And three, what other associations or student groups were you involved in at Kellogg?
Yeah. So I served as the vice president of global affairs for the Kellogg School of Management, first Kellogg Student Association, which is like student council or student body.
SUG.
And that um that sort of was it. Just I didn't set out wanting to do anything. I felt like I was going to serve more than lead because I felt like, excuse me, I'm tired. I've done this. I do. Maybe this time around, let other people do it and let me just also support them. But a friend of mine had reached out to me and said, I know you used to work in international development and foreign affairs. I'm setting up a slate. So the way Kellogg would run is we don't just run for individual offices. You assemble your own slate, the people that you want to work with, that follow all the roles, and then you get to compete against other slates. So when they reached out to me, I was like, "Ah, yeah, well, let me listen to what you have to say." And the more they talked about it, I was like, this is not bad. This is actually a good crew.
Yeah.
It was the most diverse crew I've had to work with from all regions of the world. And it wasn't like it was a clique of friends. It was based on people who had diverse experiences,
Yeah.
diverse backgrounds, and are willing to serve. And I thought, okay, that would be a good place to do. And so I ended up signing up for it, did the election. My team won. I think that was one of the biggest contributions while I was at Kellogg, being able to serve the student body, being able to put new projects together. Either we're working on global cases, like additional case studies that are diversified, not just on US business issues, or doing a lot of community building exercises to ensure that there's more cohesion within the student body. Because more than almost half of the student body is international students. So ensuring that they feel like they belong and that others also feel like they can build proper connections with them through different events. Yes, there's a range of different activities that all linked around that. And then figuring out how to strengthen the curriculum around geostrategy, like ensuring that you're preparing business leaders for this new world where there's a lot of divide along different issues. There's a lot of competition amongst nations, but how do you as business leaders function in this new world? I think that was what it was all about.
Yeah.
And it was great to have done that for my second year. I also did the exchange program. So it was another way for me to ensure that exchange students come in and feel like they're part of the Kellogg community. And small group dinners, encouraging students to host international students and introduce them into the community. And I did the same when I went to Singapore. So that was an thing. Besides serving on the student association, I also served the Africa Business Club in my first year as an alumni director. Again, figuring out to strengthen our alumni base to ensure that there was like a good pipeline or collaboration between alumni and current students, and students wanted to get into the space to ensure that we could put potentially in the future some kind of endowment that allows more students to get access to funding, which is I think is a big barrier for people to get Kellogg degrees, but it's changing and it's improving. And then in my final year as well, I served as a director for external partnerships for the Social Impact Club. Again, you can tell that I'm a social impact girl at heart. So it was good to get myself back into that space to connect with my peers who are using business as a force for good and to ensure that we secure partnerships with institutions and corporates who are willing to align on similar goals. So yeah, that was what I did in terms of student engagement and ensuring that at least I can leave some sort of legacy behind, even after my Kellogg time. That time at Kellogg, rather.
Yeah. I find it interesting when people in social entrepreneurship say things like, using business as a force for good. I'm like,
Yes,
so the rest of us that we are not in such a
you people
typical
are
shit.
very, very
We're using business
toxic.
as a force for bad, Abby.
I mean, that wasn't said by me.
But yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot now as we begin to round up. I know we've been here for a while, right? I'm going to put you on this spot. If you were having a conversation with someone who was starting business school today, so they want business school, and you were giving them, I don't know, big sister along advice, what would you say? 15 seconds or 30 seconds?
Know your why. Always lead from an understanding of your own journey, why you're doing it, and what do you want to get out of it. Because there's a lot of noise when you get into business school because everybody comes with their own dreams,
Yeah.
what is important to them, and just knowing and grounding yourself in the reality of what you want for yourself, so you're not carried away. It's like a buffet, right? You
Yeah.
can go and then you just pick, and then there's nothing strategic you're getting out of it, but you have to be quite intentional. So when you know your why, you're better able to figure out what within the buffet do you want to use to make your own meal that sets you up for the rest of your career. And so that would be my biggest advice to people, especially because times are changing. The MBA degree is no longer that, solution to everything. You want to pivot, you want to land a better paying job, you want to, progress up the ladder. It's not automatic anymore. So if you don't do it intentionally, you just might not be able to reap that dividend.
Yeah. This is so beautifully put, and I could not have said it better myself, honestly. And kind of
Oh, when it makes yeah.
you're going to spread yourself so thin that you don't make any valuable connections. You're not invested enough in any of the things you've participated in, to be memorable or to have any real experience or real expertise. And you realize like you're floating everywhere, right? So you
Yeah.
do have to make that decision. And at least thinking about it before you start business school puts you on the pedestal. A lot of people will still find out that every now and then you have to call yourself back and be like, do you really care about this thing? But if you don't even have a point of reference, something that a plan that you came into it with, I guess it's gonna be tougher for you to not be carried away. So thank you for saying
Can I
that.
just add one more thing before
Yes,
day
please.
one?
Yeah.
Because once you get into day one, then things are already sort of like in progress and it's hard to catch yourself. But before day one, before you get into the program, before you even come, make sure you give yourself time. If it means at least 3 months before that program starts, for you to be really working on what do I want to get out of this program? What are the things that can opportunities? Because that's where the pre-MBA opportunities come in. I remember telling a lot of people, even during my year, like, oh, I know you're busy with trying to relocate and stuff, but just do this thing. Like, I'm too busy. I can't deal with this right now. And they don't take advantage of opportunities that really is like literally there to ensure that you have a better experience in your first year. Whether you're successful or not, it gives you a lot of boost mentally, even emotionally, for you to be prepared for the journey ahead.
Yeah.
So I would say, don't get carried away in like, oh, I'm going away, so I want to party, I want to, work is so intense. When you leave, they forget you at your job. So make sure you prioritize yourself and give yourself enough time before the program starts for you to be able to give what it needs to be prepared for the journey ahead. Because a lot of people come here thinking it's just an automatic game here. You get in, but there's a lot of preparation mentally that happens before then.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't make time out for, and I think it's just not great for the journey overall.
That is so profound, right? And I can share testimonies because I did get into McKinsey MBA, right? Kind of like what you said. I have a Big Four background, right? Worked at Deloitte, worked at PwC. And at PwC, I was used to working, 15, 16 hours a day. Like I had never really had a 9 to 5, right? So even when I started working at Deloitte, I would usually work into the night, 9, 10. But once I decided I was going to business school, I would start working at 8, which is an hour before I needed to start working. I would stop at 5 because, like you said, you're not important enough that they won't forget you at work. You
Exactly.
need to make sure that you're doing good work. Like they don't ask you to go, or like you don't live on bad terms. Like when they now remember you for bad, you're doing good work. but don't kill yourself if you're going to be living in a way that there are opportunities on ground that you're not making, making use of. And, that discipline to say I'm going to stop working at 5, that was when I wrote my GRE. I wrote my GRE within like 3 months. I was literally writing my essays and submitting. It was so terrible. Just me and you, nobody should take our advice. Terrible advice. Every school, and I'm being honest, right? Every school, I would write the essay the night it's supposed to expire. The night that it was due. I would write it and click submit. I didn't even review it, not talk of anybody else reviewing it. I would write it, click submit. The next day, write another one, click submit. Because I applied to, was it 7 or 8 schools? So 7 in the US, 1 in the UK, got into 5. But literally, that was my strategy, which was terrible. I didn't even have time to waste. And it was in that period that I also was able to participate in pre-MBA programs to the point where I got an offer and I did not have to recruit on campus. So I had conversations with people, but I would usually say I never had a coffee chat throughout the 2 years because I wasn't trying to get a job. I knew I was going to take like McKinsey's offer and return there full time. That was what I wanted. So every conversation I was having with people was, I'm just trying to learn what you do. Like, there's no pressure. And that was because I did, what I did pre-MBA. So yes, if you have those opportunities, make use of them. Make use of them. Obviously, you might not be able to convert, but even then, you're going to be more prepared for full-time recruitment. That's so good. Thank you for saying that. Okay, final question. Jibike, you're living in the US before now, so you might not have noticed this. But when we were applying in 2023, those who had gone before us, people like Dio that you mentioned and a couple other people, had been telling us about how the employment, or let me say, the economic landscape were as robust or as amazing as it was a year or two, immediately post-COVID, where people were having, I think in 2021, people were having like average of 3 or 4 offers.
Yeah, it was
People had their peak of
not a good
jobs, right?
thing.
Yeah. And they're saying, oh, it's changing now. There's no lot of opportunities and everything. But I feel like more so right now, the employment landscape is not as great as it used to be. And then when you add on the added changes and volatility that's there in the immigration landscape, I feel like the MBA, like you said, is not one size fits all solution anymore. Before it was you want to get an MBA, of course you should. Now you do have to think about it carefully, right? It might not be the solution for everyone, right? So if you were applying to the MBA today, knowing everything that you know about the immigration landscape, the employment or the economic landscape, would you have decided to go ahead and get it? And what would your decision making process, what would that look like? What are the factors that you would consider in making a decision?
First, unconventional take would be that I would do a part-time program versus a full-time program.
Okay.
And that's because I came in with the assumption that doing a part-time program meant that I wouldn't get access to a lot of things, funding, being able to do a lot of the experiential learnings that I did, either travel, but they have their versions.
Yeah.
And then you pay for each course, at least in a Kellogg.
Yeah.
So I feel like it offers that flexibility and some risk coverage in this new world where you're not sure. So if you can actually like hold on to your job or get a job while you're at it so that you're not at that crazy mercy of this job market, then that could be an advantage. At least for my own case, I could have gotten a job after I finished a year, and I could have still done the MBA part-time while doing the job. So that's my hot take. The second thing would be actually taking a step back to figure out, do I really need an MBA? I'm not saying that the MBA is not useful. I think it is. Given that times are changing and the market is also quite volatile right now in terms of just jobs in general, it would be something that I would ask people to question themselves properly. Like, why do I really want to get this MBA? Are there other ways in which I could get the same results? Or am I ready for it right now? Because sometimes what would help you and what you need in order for it to be able to help you are different. So can you give me what it takes for you to be able to unlock that dividend you want from this degree? If you're not ready for it now, it's okay for you to wait. And by waiting, I mean, you can't be applying to an MBA program, like you said before, working into the very, very end, and you can't recruit, you can't do the pre-MBA. Like, that's why the early opportunities are there, so you can give yourself a better chance. So if you know you're not ready for that journey, don't even start, because the stakes are higher.
Yeah.
Those would be like the two questions I would ask people. Check, can I do it part-time? In fact, I've seen part-time students in Chicago party more than the full-time. So everything that you thought you knew that the purpose of like getting an MBA program, the full immersion in the learning, to actually like you can actually do the same similar things even if you're working. So that's one option for people to also consider. The other option would be, obviously I know that there's not everybody is currently in country. So if you're going to be coming from out of the country, that might not be an option. But the second thing is it's expensive, it's riskier. So if your why is not strong enough and you're just going because it's a trend and you're excited about all the LinkedIn announcements and all the gears, everybody taking their,
I'm happy to announce.
I'm happy to announce, please run your race. Like very, very intentional about this. It's not just a stamp for you to join the league. Will it be nice? Yes, but make sure it's for your own journey and not because you just saw somebody else do it.
That is so well, beautifully put that I have nothing to add. So I'm just gonna move on. So I lied earlier. That was not my last question. It was my last official question, but I have two unofficial questions that I like. One is, tell me something about Kellogg that you can't really find out in the brochures, right? Something you cannot just read online. Something you have to be at Kellogg to find out. And it can be as simple as a painting or a sculpture or a tunnel or a restaurant, something that you found out, Kellogg while being there. And the second thing is, tell me something about yourself that we haven't spoken about today. So something aside work and career and MBA, something about Jibike that you're excited about or you're involved in that makes you are.
Something about Kellogg. That one is a tough one because I feel like I've taught John. You should have told me so that I wouldn't
You
have
have
dropped
kept it, Harry.
I feel like I've dropped all of the things that I could have used, the funding that you never see anywhere online. Like you don't know these things exist. But I'll say the people, you probably wouldn't know until you become one of them. I was talking to somebody recently who actually finished from Duke, and he was complaining about he doesn't want to disturb alumni anymore. So I'm like, to be honest, I was of the same opinion. Like, there's something that happens when you finish. Like these are sets. There's a pipeline, the MBA job pipeline that just dries up in your very face.
Yeah.
And it just feels like, oh my God, like when did they shut all the doors like against me? Now I have to enter general pop, which is experience higher, which is just, it's more difficult in terms of like, it's gangster. So I'm like, every other opportunity I'm seeing class of 2026. I just finished now, like, open the door, let me, I'm still here. But that's where the alumni network and the people that this brand has exposed you to comes in. Because I was trying to apply for a job at the IFC and I just reached out to somebody on my LinkedIn that I've connected with, but we never like engaged. We never had like a chance to speak. And I told him, this is the job. One, I want to have a coffee chat. Two, I need you to help me refer me for jobs. Ideally, I'd want to have a conversation with you first before, but the deadline, so let me know. And it was so direct. Like I just told him what I wanted. And that same night, he responded. Two of them, actually, two different firms. One was for Google. And it was just like, oh my God, this is the power of like, we call it Kellogg Nice. Who are ready to just, beyond you just saying Kellogg Nice as a slogan, it's like when you feel it, it's hard to shake up. And until you experience it, it's not something that you see on the website. It's not something you can really relate to until it happens to you. So that'll be that. On the second question of one thing about me, I thought I was just coming to business school to learn, expose myself to capital markets. See, the love scene in the MBA program is another thing entirely, and there are two ways to look about it. You don't want to be very careful because when you enter a place when there's lots of competition or people with different orientations, there's risks to even like dating in business school, but there's also like the upside. So it's like trade-offs. Are you willing to experience it in order to be able to potentially get that upside of people? You see people getting married, like they met in business school, and it's always like an amazing story. So I'd say that was one thing that I didn't think I even wanted, but when I entered, everybody was always about, oh, is that like, do you have a JV? We call it JV, like joint venture. Kellogg, do you have a spouse? Do you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend? Or are you married? Everything is JV.
And Tango.
I'm here. Ask me about me. What do you care? Like every conversation quickly boils down to JV, and it just makes you start thinking a lot more. The sense that every conversation, like there's something that you're missing, like there's something here. And so that's why I didn't think that Kellogg was going to teach me about, opening myself or being very emotionally available in that way, but it's something that I found out interestingly. And so, yeah, if you're coming to business school, open your mind for like every kind of learning, every kind of transformation you can think of in your life.
Yeah.
You would experience it again.
I like how you answered the second question without really answering it. I like
No.
it's fine. It's fine.
It
So
depends.
the question is there a JV in the process existing?
That was not the question. If I did not bring it, would you have
I
asked me?
mean,
No.
now that you started answering it, just kidding. Just
No,
kidding.
there was an almost, but it didn't happen. And still, it was something I definitely do not take for granted that I got to experience that and that lesson. Like now I'm definitely a lot more emotionally available than I was before I started the program. I was my career, this is what I want. And now it's just helped me expand my capacity to sort of be all the versions of myself I can be.
Okay. That's amazing.
I started a nonprofit in Nigeria before I came to the US working on disability inclusion, teaching kids with disabilities around STEM. So even though I'm not an engineer, I'm still engineering. Like I'm still an engineer by education, and I wanted other people to be able to experience that flexibility or choice to be able to go into more high-paying fields and stuff. So when I got to Kellogg, it sort of broadened my view on how I could expand that into the real sense of building a social venture. And so based on my own personal experiences of caring for, my parents who live in Nigeria and either, through sickness and stuff, I figured out that there was a gap that I could solve through, tech solutions and just innovation in general.
Yeah.
And so that was all I was doing, trying to figure out how to roll out solutions to ensure that people, particularly as you live in different regions, either in country or outside the country, how do you care for the loved ones that you leave behind over the years? And so that's what my startup is trying to do. It's called Agile Care, and it's named after my sister who took care of my dad while he was ill. She's the only one in country, and I just felt like it would be an honor to launch something in a name that shows that from our name is Ibijoke, which means family takes care of people. But Ajoke, the other version of our names means that we all care, we collectively care. And so it's coined from my name, Ajoke, which means like we collectively care for our elderly population. So fingers crossed, you see how it goes. I still test product market fit. It's gonna use a blend of enabling current players on the ground and introducing additional health tech devices for monitoring, for diagnostics, and the likes. A lot of smart technology as well, wearables. So watch this space, and it just might be
on you. I'm betting on you.
out of Africa.
Yeah, that's gonna be good. Thank you so much. I know we've gone way above time. But yes, I just want to take a minute to thank you so much for making the time to be here and for sharing so freely and so, what's the word, passionately, I guess, about your journey and your experiences. I think it's gonna be very valuable for people that listen who are applying to class of 2028 and beyond.
That's from Joy. Thank you so much for making me a star. And good luck to everyone out there who's trying to get into an MBA program or about starting one. It's about the best, one of the best journeys of your life.
Amazing, amazing. And see you guys on another episode of the Business 101 podcast. Okay. We finally got internet to work. This is amazing.
I know.
And it actually then got really good. It like the video quality is pretty high.